Hello and welcome to Property Mastermind Podcast, episode 246. Today we are talking self-managed super funds and property development, what you need to know before you start. We have a lot of questions around this topic, so jump on into this episode. You are going to learn a truckload. Hello and welcome to Property Mastermind Podcast, episode 246. Today we're talking using your self-managed super fund for property development. And before we get started, this is by no means tax advice. We are not giving tax advice. This is just general information, isn't it, Bob?
Absolutely. Yep. Got to be very careful about that. No legal, no accounting advice, no tax advice.
No.
Is there anything to talk about? What's left?
There's tons to talk about when it comes to self-managed super fund. Before we do, Bob, we're giving away the book. Peter Bassist. Books for you, mate. Let us know your address and it's in the post. And we hope you enjoy it. Oh, there we go. Can we see this? The Stevie Award, the Gold Stevie Award we won for this podcast. How good's that? There you go. The little diamante thing on top was a bit loose. But anyway, I had to bring that all the way home from New York, I did. Hey, I mentioned at the end of the podcast that you might want to download our self-managed super fund checklist, but I cover off everything on this fabulous checklist. So if it's something you're interested, head on over to the Property Mastermind Instagram page and just put in the comments SMSF, meaning self-managed super fund, and the team will shoot it over to you. It's a fantastic resource and you will love the information that it has. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the episode. Bob, today, talking self-managed super fund and, you know, what people really need to know before they start. Before we start, what's the tip for the day?
Ooh, on the spot.
On the spot. Are you kidding me?
I know one.
What?
Well, you just caught up with somebody for a coffee.
Yes.
And you told me that there was alligators there and you had to...
Dinosaurs, Bob, dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs. Remember that Hilary is from New Zealand? And she thinks that everything in Australia is out to kill her. Even poor little frilled neck lizards.
They are about 60 centimetres long, these things. There were three of them.
Water dragon type lizards.
I don't even care. I just called them dinosaurs and I started freaking out. And I tried to, my friend and I were the only ones out the back of the cafe because they only really have an out the back and I'd never been there before and I can't go back because I was actually petrified and nobody cared.
Oh, there's a tip. If you're a Kiwi, be careful where you go to have a coffee. There could be dinosaurs around.
Exactly, it was a dinosaur. Bob, let's talk about self-managed super fund and not the fears of Hilary Saxton, because you know there is a fair few when it comes to animals, lizards, geckos, all those sorts of things. But anyways, first of all, let's just talk about what is self-managed super fund.
All right. Well, look, we're going to keep it pretty simple and obviously, again, none of this is tax advice. Superannuation we're all pretty familiar with because these days, as far as an employer is concerned, and for quite a few years now, it's been compulsory for employers to pay super. And that's a good thing. Not probably employers don't like paying super, but you have to anyway, and that's good. So it goes into the super fund of the employee. Of course, you can have your own fund as well, and you can top up at various stages of your life. So, but I mean, the whole thing about super is that it's a great environment for building wealth because you can't just jump in and get your hands on it. You have to have a very, very strong reason to be able to tap your super before you're, you know, of a late age, shall we say, before you're at the pension phase. And so it's forced, in a way, it's like forced savings. And because you can't get your hands on it, you can't go and grab your super and go buy a new car or a boat. And so it keeps accumulating and it's compounding. And it's in a good tax environment as well, and particularly later on when you go into the pension phase and you build up quite a nest egg of super. So super's a really good thing.
So, Bob, why do people go from, we'll say, industry fund, where it's controlled by, you may choose an industry that you put yours in, or maybe where you work has one, or whatever that looks like for you. Why do people, we'll just call that industry fund, why do people choose to go from industry fund to self-managed?
Well, probably the main reason would be for control. So there's plenty of super funds out there, obviously, Australian super fund, Hestia, heaps of them. And they invest your funds for you. So you're part of a big cache of money. And there's a huge amount of money that goes into super annually, as you can imagine. When people, employers paying, what is it, about 11%, whatever it is. And they invest those funds in a whole range of things and get a return for you. And they charge fees, of course, as they should, for doing that work. And so some people think, well, I don't like the lack of control. I don't like the fact that my money just disappears into a big black hole and I've got people I don't know managing it, doing things with it that I might or might not agree with. And there could be lots of reasons why you might not agree with it. And so people say, well, look, I think I can do a better job by myself if I was to take control of my super. And so you can't tell the super fund how to invest your super. So you would have to set up the first two words, self-managed, pretty well explains it, that you're managing, you set up a fund, your own super fund, if you like, and you manage it. So the reason somebody would do it would be if they think they can do a better job. They're not happy with their returns. They think they can do better. That'd have to be the main reason why people would do it.
And Bob, we did, look it up. What the average industry fund over 10 years, there becomes an average, and this has been looked at reasonably extensively, and that figure was around 7%, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was about 7. Obviously, some have done better than that and some have done worse. And
it varies over.
It's an average over, I don't know how many years that was, but it was a fairly long time, at least 10 years, I'd say, 10 or 20 years. And so some people think, well, I can do better than that.
Yeah, and I suppose especially when it comes to investing in property development, because the returns can be better than that. So when does it make sense for somebody to use self-managed or to have a self-managed super fund as opposed to staying within an industry? And at what point would you consider doing it? And again, this is not advice.
No, but I hear from a lot of accountants say that until you've got a minimum of $200,000 in your super, it's generally not worth setting up a self-managed super fund. And that's because it costs something to have it established. You've got to have a trustee, there's higher accountancy fees. There's a bit in it. And so there are overheads and costs and the establishment fee, of course. So they say, well, look, not much point having a self-managed super fund if you've got $50,000 in the fund and you're going to have all these fees come out of it. So that's often the case.
So we've ticked the box of generally people might move to self-managed if they think they can do better than the industry average over a period of 10 years, being around 7% and that, as we're saying, some do better than that and some do worse. That's an average. And then you might think, well, I can do better than that. And you've got sort of around at least 200,000 and up in super available. That's kind of, if you tick those two boxes, you want your own control, then that's when people might consider it. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, it is, yeah. And the thing is, you can invest those funds in a whole range of things. It doesn't have to be property. It could be property investment. We'll talk about property development separately.
Yeah.
It could be shares, debentures, the gold. It could be a whole heap of acceptable assets, I guess, that you can invest in with your own funds. There's a lot of rules around what you can and can't do with super, of course.
Yeah, and when it comes to property development, we are going to unpack that because it is something people do ask a lot and are interested. But just before we get to there, what are other options? You've just mentioned shares, etc. Meaning, so you say you've got, let's just use 500,000 as an example in your self-managed super fund. You can split it up. You could put 200,000 into that and 300,000 into X, or you can actually segment it to where you want it to go.
Yeah, the same as a financial planner would do. The same as the actual super funds do.
Yeah.
I mean, they'd have a bit of a split how they do it. There'd be international shares, Australian. There'd be perhaps some funds, some cash managed funds, like a whole heap of stuff. Local shares. They wouldn't play commodities that too high, but just like a normal financial planner might do for you. The funds do it, but then it's up to you now. So thing is, you're taking responsibility now for your own fund.
Mm.
So unless you're really switched on and have some investment savvy, you're probably better off leaving it to the experts in the funds. It's only if you think or believe strongly that you can do better with your money as to and have that control as well that you would want to do it.
Okay, Bob, here we go. We're going to open the door. Self-managed super fund and property development. How do they work together? And it's a massive question because of, you can't use your own self-managed super fund in your own developments, that sort of thing. So let's just unpack some of the easy rules that we can help people with when it comes to self-managed super fund and property development.
Yeah, well, I suppose if you take just one step back before property development, we're talking about property as an asset class, property investment. So lots of people have bought investment properties in their self-managed super fund. And that's been around for quite a while. I wouldn't know how many years now. It could be, gosh, I'm only guessing 15 or 20 years since you've been able to invest in property. You used to be able to years ago. And so that can be a good thing. And there are rules around that.
They can have a loan?
Oh, yeah, you can certainly get a loan. You have to gear it. And I guess that's one of the things if you buy an investment property, or just do investment at the moment, we'll get to property development, but you buy an investment, so you can gear it. So you use your self-managed super fund as a deposit. You borrow funds from a financier, and therefore you've got rental and you've got capital growth. So it's a matter of how that goes. But the good thing is you can gear it. Unlike cash in the bank, it's not geared. In property, you can gear it. And so a lot of people have investment properties in their super. I'm on to self-managed super now. About managed super. And I guess the question a lot of people ask, as you said, well, can I take the next step? I'm a bit more entrepreneurial. I'm willing to do a bit more with my super. Can I use it in a property development? Because that would gear it up even further. Like the returns from property development, obviously a lot higher than the returns from just a static investment in direct property in property investment. And so can we do that? Can we gear it up? Can we really start cranking some good returns out of it? And when it comes to property development, there's two paths you can go. And this is the same even with non-super money. So if you want to make money out of property development and you've got money, self-managed super fund or not, you can go down the path of being a developer, learning how to be a developer and develop your own properties and make money and hold some of the properties you develop as long-term investments. So it's a great thing to do. But of course, you can make money out of property development without property developing. And that's your area of expertise, which is as an investor. So you can invest your money in somebody else's project and get a good return from that. And so same thing with self-managed super. You can say, well, can I do a development in my self-managed super? And the straight answer is no, because of the beneficial interest of it, that you are investing in your own property development. It's a bit different when you got your own money. Of course you can, but this is superannuation money, and there's a lot of rules around it because they see it. I'd say the ATO, they see it as riskier. Like it took them many years to enable you to just invest in a property investment. A long time before you could do that. And it's just a bridge too far to let you develop in your own self-managed super fund as such. And when I say that, I'm talking about borrowing money to do it. Now, you can develop in your own super fund your own property developments if you don't borrow. So if you had...
if you're bankrolling it.
Bankrolling it yourself, yeah. If you had $2 million in your super fund, you could go and do a property development that costs you $2 million because you're not gearing it, you're not borrowing. And you could do that because a lot of people don't have enough money in their super to do a property development, even a small one, without borrowing. That's just the whole thing, without borrowing. And so generally speaking, most people who have money in their super would need to borrow, and that's where it becomes an issue of doing your own property development. That's where it can happen. There is, I believe, and I ask anybody to check this with a really good property accountant, and I've never done it, but I've been told that to unrelated super funds can do a property development and borrow money, providing it's a pure joint venture, 50-50 up the middle. Neither of the two super funds have any control over the other super fund, which is why it would want to be 50-50, and that they can borrow. So I haven't done it. I've heard it's possible. I'm saying to anybody, check it out really well first. That would be an unrelated super fund though. So there'd be no point my fund and your fund doing it together because we're too closely related.
There's a whole rule they talk about with super funds, and it's arm's length, which it just means not related at all. So you can't use your children's super fund. Like that has to be arm's length. It has to be a completely unrelated super fund that goes into a development if you are the developer.
Yeah, and the other issue or little hurdle you have to overcome there is because you supposedly are allowed to do that, you would be borrowing money from a financier. The financier won't take a guarantee from your super fund, so they would have to be okay with taking like a personal guarantee from you, unrelated to the super fund. But that's one way. Of course, that's developing in your own super fund. That there might be just that little. It's almost like a little loophole. The two unrelated super funds doing a joint venture and being able to borrow.
That's about the only way. So the other way that super fund can be involved in property development, Bob, is
in somebody else's project. Not as an equity partner. So not with their super fund on the title on the loan. But they can invest capital by way of a loan to another unrelated party, another developer. And we do that all the time ourselves.
And just as you're saying that, Bob, so that means that super fund gets an interest rate return. You've got to remember that we talked at the beginning, the average of industry is bringing in 7%. So anything 9, 10, 11, 12, a constant number, even up to as high as 17%, is reasonably normal. And so you can see why it does become a little bit more enticing for people who do have self-managed super funds.
Yeah, it can range anything, like you said, probably 10 to 17 or 18% per annum interest, depending on the structure of how the whole thing's structured. But basically, to keep it really simple, it's a loan between an individual self-managed super fund and a developer or a development, whereby that self-managed super fund loans money to the developer to do part or all of the development, and therefore there is a loan between the two and some form of security. It could be a second mortgage or whatever the security happens to be that both parties are happy with, but that's a pretty common way. It has to meet. There's a few other little rules about having to meet certain investment benchmarks, but generally speaking, we're trying to keep this fairly simple.
Yeah,
obviously, to get the real advice, you've got to go to an experienced accountant who's experienced in self-managed super funds. Not all accountants are experienced in the whole law and rules around self-managed super funds, so you want to get your advice from somebody who is.
But don't be afraid of it.
No, it's a good thing. I mean, it's a great vehicle. Self-managed super funds are a great vehicle because of the tax benefits and because you're in control.
Are we allowed to dive in and have a wee peek at those tax benefits without you giving tax advice?
No, it's definitely not tax advice, but it's held differently inside that little embryo that of
the
like
fund.
15% tax. Depending on how it went in there, but it goes in the normal way. And then somebody could be in their pension phase later in life, could be 66 years old or whatever they are, and it can be tax-free. So
if you were to invest in, say, other people's property developments, they're at arm's length, so they're not related to you, you're putting chunks of money in, getting a better return than you would in an industry fund, then those returns go back into your super. So you're turning your
Yeah.
500,000 into 6, 7, 8. It keeps growing and growing. And then when somebody can draw on that, if they hit pension phase, once they hit 66, then that income,
65 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, but when they hit that phase, that money inside their super is then withdrawn tax-free versus, well, it
could be 15% under some circumstances, but tax-free under the pension phase. 15%. I think that's how it works.
Yeah, it's a lot better than investing.
It's an individual.
It's a great option.
Say an individual invested funds. You're John Smith, you have money in the bank, take some money out of John Smith's account, invest it as John Smith, and your interest now will be personal. And so the tax that you would pay on that interest would be whatever tax bracket you happen to put yourself up into during that year. So it'd be quite a lot more. Particularly individuals, or you might invest through a company, and under certain circumstances, you might be paying 25% tax or whatever on that. So structure is important as well, the structure that people use. But self-managed super, of course, it's a whole world of its own.
And so you're managing your own sort of, you've got someone helping you there. It's called self-managed, but you've got a bit more control over what's happening with it. And then you might loan money to somebody who is doing property development, and then the returns go back to your super fund, and you can just do that over and over and over. Or there are some bigger industries where they just put it in and they just leave it sitting. They just leave it sitting in there and it's rolling over and over in property development.
I think you can even take part of your self-managed super funds if you want to invest in a managed super fund.
Can you do that? Can you split it half self-managed and half managed?
Well, you're investing funds out of your self-managed super fund into what, and it's super money. So I think that's a possibility as well. But we're really into property, so
yes.
We're not really talking about investing into gold or anything else in with your self-managed super. We're property developers, so that's. Can you do it? And the answer is, well, under certain circumstances, you can make pretty good money out of property development with your self-managed super fund, but under those rules that we talked about.
I often get emails from people saying they've got super. Have we got anything available? That's pretty standard. I've got X amount in super. Do you have anything available? Recently, or within the last 3 years, actually not that recent, but I did know of a couple of mentoring students who use their self-managed super fund to be an investor in other people's projects. And I think the nice thing about that, and people from our community, is they understand property development.
Yeah.
They understand what's being done, and even though they're not technically an equity partner, they probably feel a bit more like they're part of that development because, rather than just parking the money, they probably get a bit more excited about it because it's an investment into development and they know what that means, what it looks like, and what the return's going to be.
Oh yeah, it is. It's quite exciting because a lot of people just invest in stuff and go to sleep. It just depends. But you're more active. Self-managed super fund, you're remaining active, and like I said, you're responsible for the outcome of this whole thing. So you want to know what you're doing, and you want to remain active, like making every dollar work. You could just throw it in the Commonwealth Bank and get, I don't know, whatever you get, 4% or something, and go to sleep. But
remember.
What would be the point of that?
I just recently found out at the Commonwealth Bank that I had some money in there and it was making like nothing, like 1% if you're lucky. And then one of my accounts actually had an interesting return rate of about 4% or something. And I had no idea. The bank doesn't even tell you. So there's no way you would know to move money around or put it in better accounts. Whereas I think with super, we're a bit more focused on what to do with it. And
this is our future.
Yeah,
our super. So it's really important to get the most out of it because we're getting compound growth, out of our super. So same old story. The earlier you start super, the better, and being compulsory these days, people do start early. Like my dad worked his whole life, never had 1 cent in super because it wasn't compulsory, and he never had any money. He never had the money. He never put money into super. His employers never had to pay him super. It was before you had to pay super, so he didn't have a cent of super.
Bob, what do you see as big mistakes? Let's talk about the negative side of self-managed super going into property development.
Oh, it's like anything, any investment. You have to understand it, and you have to analyse it, and you have to understand what the risks are, and make your mind up about it. So, something like investing in someone else's property development, and this goes whether it's just your own money or whether it's self-managed super or not, is who is that person? Because although it's a property development, somebody's doing it. So, who is this person? What are they like? You know, what's perhaps their level of experience, or are they getting help at least from somebody and really knows what they're doing, even if they're relatively inexperienced? Like, all these things matter. Size of project, type of project, profitability of project. Find out whatever you can about that project, really, and be comfortable with the person and be comfortable with the project, whether it's self-managed super fund or not.
So I think our takeaways for today are self-managed super fund can be used as an investing vehicle, really, in property development. The returns are going to be likely better than you'll get with an industry fund. You should always get advice first. You can do your own property development with your own self-managed super fund if you had enough to do the whole thing and didn't have to borrow any money. We're not 100% sure that you could do a property development with an unrelated party who, if it was 50-50, exactly the same, and those two could come together and borrow money, but we're not 100 on that. We're
I've
like
been told
90.
that by two pretty clever accountants who specialise in property.
Yep.
I've just never done it.
Yeah, there you go. And then setting and really self-managed super fund looking at starting at around 200,000 because the fees and the setup costs are reasonably high to do under that amount, and it's a great way to control your future rather than allowing somebody else to, because even though you're in an industry, they still make mistakes, they get it wrong, it's still an investment.
Yeah. I mean, if you can get a big enough nest egg together somehow and even do a development without borrowing, albeit even a small one, you do pretty well. If you think about it, say a project, let's use some really round numbers. We always look at a project, the return on cost. Let's say we're looking for a 20% return on cost, which means our profit as a percentage of our total costs. And that'd be a decent project, 20% return on cost. But remember, on a normal project, that includes a fair chunk of interest and finance costs, which you wouldn't have in this case. So that would probably equate to something like 25% if you took all the finance costs out of the thing. And so if you did it yourself, you'd be making about 25% on your money, because you're not borrowing, you're not gearing it. So you'd be making the standard old 20% plus, because no finance costs, it'd probably take you up to 25% return on your capital. So
that's a pretty good blooming return.
Yeah, but of course you have to have a decent nest egg to do a property development with. But you might do a small one, where you might get 15 to 20%. But it's pretty safe when you're not borrowing as well. That just takes another level of risk off the table, and maybe you can do a smaller one.
Bob, in closing, is there anything you think that we need to cover off on when it comes to self-managed super fund and property development, or you think we got there, it's done?
I think we got there because we're pretty careful not to say too much. It's not our area of expertise. You need to go to an expert, but it's definitely something that's growing. The self-managed super fund industry is growing continually. I mean, super's growing. But self-managed super, the number of self-managed super funds is quite staggering. I can't remember what the number is, but there's a lot out there. And I think it's just comes down to people not being 100% happy with their returns that they're getting and thinking, well, I can do better. But you'd need to be better. You would need to be better.
Yeah.
So you'd want to be a bit savvy about how you're going to invest, not just do it because you're cranky with a low return your fund might have produced for a year or two.
Hey, Bob, we're going to give away a wee checklist about this on self-managed super fund. So if you'd like to grab a copy of that, just jump on over to the Property Mastermind Instagram page, Property Mastermind on Instagram, and just put a tag, comment there, we'll call it self-managed super fund info, or even just put self-managed super fund in the team.
SMSF.
Yeah, they'll send you the information on that, and maybe it's something that you're interested in learning a little bit more about even just for the takeaways from this podcast, the bullet points, so you know whether maybe self-managed super fund and property development are something that you might like to get into. Anyway, Bob, thanks so much. I know this episode will be interesting for most people. It's one of those ones we get asked about an awful lot. And catch you again next week.
Okay, I'll see you then.
Bye for now.
Bye.